here again for another AMA. That's right. I think it's been... has it only been 1 week? It may have been 2. No, you know what? I think I've only missed 1. I'm going to say I've only missed 1. And, well, I had good reason for it. I was abroad, you see. I was in sunny Portugal, so I pre-arranged for a video, pre-recorded video to go up on the nature of playing evil characters in RPGs. And you know what? That video seems to have done quite well. So thank you very much, everybody who watched that one. And if you haven't, you can find it on my YouTube channel. Today, I am walking and talking and on my way to another evening of running games, which is one of my favourite things to do on a Wednesday night. It's as if I can't get enough of them. So, hopefully some people tune in, so I'm not just speaking into the void, which is what I often feel like I'm doing. If you are watching live, please do comment in the chat, let me know that I'm not alone. I'd hate to be the last man alive on Earth. Wouldn't that be terrible? Being Burgess Meredith with his broken glasses. Time enough at last. Though, I don't know. Maybe a bit short-sighted. I'm sure he would have been able to make the best of it. Maybe he could have taught himself Braille in the many years he had left after the bombs dropped on his grand library in the city surrounding it. In fact, it wasn't just the library. He was working in the bank, wasn't he? See here, a man named Burgess Meredith who just wants to read and read. Only he doesn't have time because he has a job just like everybody else. Burgess Meredith in the Twilight Zone. That was a very terrible Rod Serling impression, but I hope you can forgive me. Because right now I'm waiting for interaction. That's right, interaction. If you have something to say, say it. If you have a question to ask, ask it. And if you've got a thumb to leave up, please do give a thumbs up to the video. It will make more people join in and ask questions. That's how I find this thing works. The algorithm is programmed to respond to thumbs up. If you leave a thumbs up, this video will show up on other people's subscription feeds, pop up on their phones, their tablets, their computers, whatever it is they use to get notified on YouTube. And of course, if no one tunes in, well, that's going to make me very sad, because it means I'm going to have to speak to myself for this entire AMA. I don't have to, obviously. I could just end it here and now, which sounds rather final and fatal. Hello, Link the Vampire. I did have a very good vacay. I had a lovely holiday. Yes, Portugal was sunny and bright and warm and lovely. I wasn't in the part of Portugal that's currently ravaged by wildfires, which helped. Yeah. I managed to avoid that. But southern Portugal was very, very nice, as it always is. I do love Portugal. There aren't many countries I've visited that I don't love, to be honest. It's very rare. The country itself is off-putting. Sometimes the people within it can be, if they say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. So far, the Portuguese haven't done wrong by me. So I went hunting dolphins, bagged a pod of them. That was fun. Got to see them jumping out of the water. So yeah, that was good. Anyway, those are brutal bastards playing with their mackerel, throwing it around like cats, you know, slowly gutting a mouse for fun, but also elegant. Very nice to see. Rusty Nerfect says, do you enjoy meta narrating your own existence? Yeah, I do this even when I'm not recording. I just talk and talk and talk. And eventually, sometimes someone listens, they say, stop talking. But that is a response, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm like a child who keeps asking why. Except for me, I talk about role-playing games, and I never get very good questions, except on here. This is where people respond to me through the World Wide Web, the information highway, not hideaway. Benjamin Lesser says, how are those flags being hung up everywhere? Haven't seen a single one of them. And I tell you what, if you see any while I'm on this walk, do let me know. I have no doubt there are parts of the country where there are St. George's flags being hung up. But it's also worth noting that these kinds of things are reported focusing on the places where they are being hung up, which is to say they're not going to report on all the very many places where they're not. So I'm not prepared yet to declare a state of national emergency, shall we say. Sometimes papers, especially right-wing tabloids, have a style of, well, shall we say, over-egging certain puddings. Benjamin wants to know, have I ever been to America? Yes, many times. Many times have I been to the USA. Once upon a time, in the year 2000, I think, 8. Yes, it was 2008. I hitchhiked all the way from New York to Seattle. It was a long and arduous journey. I lost about half of my body weight, nearly died, and for various causes. But it was something of a pilgrimage. I needed to do it at that time in my life. I wouldn't do it now. And I also had the benefit, and a rather extreme benefit, I'll admit, of being white and male and British. Now you may think, well, how does that help? Well, I can tell you, and I've put this into a role-playing game as well, that I had a ghost doing this in the Ghost Hunters RPG, a hitchhiker serial killer. Sorry about the wind, by the way, it was getting picked up on the mic. So, I went around with a laminated sign. It said, British man heading west. That's all it said on it, with a picture of a Union flag, coincidentally. No, St. George's flags, yeah, where are they all? And sure enough, I very rarely had to wait much longer than about 5-10 minutes before someone picked me up. And this was anywhere that I was in the United States. Because a great deal, if I'm speaking anthropologically here, or more sociologically, of Americans are incredibly polite, especially to white British men. And a lot of Americans are incredibly curious, especially about white British men. And a lot of Americans are really interested in their history, or their family's history, and their nation's history, such as it is, and how they can connect back to places like Britain. So you see a sign that says British man heading west was the perfect lure to get picked up. I very rarely had to walk. There were a couple of occasions where I did have to walk a long way. I was in one of the Dakotas, so it was very near the end of my trip, and that was my closest near-death experience, which I could get into. But sure enough, every time I got picked up, the American who gave me a ride would say, and a couple of Canadians, to be fair, as I recall, would ask, wow, you're British, where are you from? Do you know Buckingham Palace? and such. Not have I ever visited there, have I ever had tea with the Queen. Wow, you must still be really cut up about Princess Diana, huh? And that's not to say every single American is a fucking moron. Far from it. But I received so much kindness. I received a huge amount of kindness from Americans. Rarely ever had to pay to stay anywhere, which was very useful because I didn't have any money. So when I wasn't staying in YMCAs, in churches, sort of community halls, I was allowed to stay in there. Often people picked me up as long as they were heading in the same direction as I was. I would ask, I don't suppose I could stay on your couch overnight, I'll be gone before you wake up. Or worse, in fact, they would never let me go before they wake up, of course. They would always want to fix me up a breakfast, send me off with something to eat. I remember one place, where was I? This was just after I'd left Chicago. So I guess it might have been Illinois. I was picked up by a very kind guy who invited me home to meet his family, his wife and his daughter, and they were all very pleasant, and they were Seventh-day Adventists, who I'd never encountered before. I'd never heard of a Seventh-day Adventist, but these people were it. And they weren't prepared to allow me to stay unless I could basically prove that I was a Christian, which may sound odd to you, to anyone here who isn't American or maybe a Seventh-day Adventist, but this was a condition on my staying. They didn't want me staying in the house unless I was a good Christian boy. And so they asked me things like, what was my favourite book from the New Testament? What was my favourite chapter and verse? That kind of thing. And the good news was, I doubt I could do it now, I was able to recite that kind of thing, because while I'm not a practicing Christian at all, far from it, I was raised in a mixed faith household and went to a Christian school and studied religious studies pretty keenly, and so I was able to do that, prove my worth. Anyway, they allowed me to stay, and that was all very pleasant. And even though they attached that condition, they were never condemning or anything like that about it, probably because I passed the test. And as I was leaving the following morning, they gave me a box. It was like a cardboard box. It wasn't even like a cardboard box, it was a cardboard box that they had strapped to my pack, because I had a big Bergen, huge backpack, and said, this will help you on your journey. And unquestioningly, I took it. And it was heavy. And I think I had fooled myself into thinking, this is going to contain loads of food, loads of essentially trail rations, things that will help me survive on this journey. And so I carried it with me for quite a while before opening it, thinking I don't want to open it until I'm desperate. And it contained a Bible. So this was a truly desperate scene. I was on the side of a road. It was a country road. I'd been dropped off several hours before, hadn't made my way close to a highway at that point. Must have either still been in Illinois or Wisconsin or one of the two. And I thought, right, now's the time. Now's the time to break into this box and see what treasures my former hosts have bestowed upon me. And yes, it contained a Bible and a hell of a lot of religious literature, pamphlets, leaflets, and so on. And I was hungry to the point I was clawing through this. And there were Seventh-day Adventist pamphlets just flying across the road in the wind. I was thinking, where's the fucking food? And you know, sometimes in movies, people get so desperate they sort of turn a book upside down and start opening it and shaking it as if something might be in there. I'm fairly certain I did that. But they meant well. You can't fill your stomach on religious tracts, unfortunately. And now that is a very different story to the hospitality I received in one of the Dakotas. I genuinely can't remember which Dakota it was. I guess it's irrelevant. There were lots of forests. I know that doesn't really narrow it down. But I was sticking to the north, as obviously, because I was going from New York to Seattle. And by this point, I have no idea how many pounds I'd lost in weight, but it was a lot. And I had a lot of beard, or at least a month's worth, and probably looked quite unpleasant. You know, I was washing wherever I could, but I actually wanted to, grow a beard out during this thing. I thought, I don't want to waste time shaving. I want something to show for my journey. The massive weight loss was probably a part of it. But anyway, so it was nighttime in a forested area. I had got to a point where I knew I was in one of the Dakotas, and yet I had been walking for sufficiently long with not one vehicle passing or stopping to pick me up. And I was getting quite desperate, and it started raining, and it was raining a lot. And I was getting cold, and I was hungry and very much underweight. And a pickup pulled up beside me. I've told this story before to a couple of people. I've never really spoken about it widely, but enough time has passed now, I think. So anyway, a pickup pulled up. Had a man and a woman in it. Had one of those bench seats in the front. And they weren't hicks, but the way it plays in my head is, you are come in, just throw your bag in the back and climb in between us, kind of thing. And so I threw my bag in the back of their pickup and climbed into the front. The lady moved out so I could get in. I can remember all this pretty clearly, and I was a sodden wreck, and they didn't complain, and I was sat between them. And we started heading on. And I just said, I'm a British man heading west, which is how I'd introduce myself in pretty much every situation, often to laughter. Oh, gee, where are you head from? Oh, all the way from New York. Really? I didn't know New York was in Britain. And so I told them a bit of my story. And as I was telling them my story, which was kind of the cost of passage, the woman in the front placed a hand very high up on my thigh and gripped it tightly. And she said, "Don't you worry, we'll take care of you." And the guy who was driving, I swear by the Seventh-day Adventists that all of this is true. The guy who was driving looked at me and said, "Oh yeah, we'll take real good care of you." And I don't think there's ever been an occasion before or since that I genuinely felt like I was about to have something horrible happen to me. And it was the only time in my life I've had a panic attack. I'm fairly certain it was a panic attack because I've never been able to replicate the feeling. Now, my feelings, my interpretation of the events could have been a result of my exhaustion, my malnourishment, my just being fucking wet and cold. But while the pickup was in motion, I started clawing at the door and trying to get out of the thing, and they started shouting at me, what the fuck are you doing, you crazy? For all they knew, I could have been crazy. And they pulled over with a screech. And I climbed out. I grabbed my bag from the back. And we were still surrounded by woods. This was an unlit stretch of, let's call it South Dakota. And I just ran into the woods, which was probably a very stupid thing to do, because those two remained there and they were shouting after me, there's bears in those woods, they're gonna kill you, they'll kill you if they find you, you stupid dumb Brit, you don't know what these woods are like, that kind of thing. And I was just so terrified at that point, so panicked, I just hid. And it was still raining, and I was still cold. And they remained parked there for what felt like a very long time. It was probably closer to about 5 minutes, which is still a pretty long time to just wait. And I was just worried they were going to come in and hunt me down or something like that. They didn't. They stayed by the pickup, waiting, calling for me. But their calling wasn't in any way nice. It was very goading and intimidating. And eventually they just drove off. And I realized my position. I was in the woods, I was cold, I was wet, and there were bears out there. And so I made my way back to the road and just started walking. And I'm fairly certain if what happened next hadn't happened, I probably would have died that night, which again, as I say, this is the closest I think I've ever been to death. Not just because those two might have murdered me and skinned me, but because I think I probably would have died of hypothermia if I'd stayed exposed out there for that long. And so I carried on walking, and by a miracle, there was a diner. You know, I'm sure many Americans, we don't have them in the UK so much, but like a service station, diner, setback, parking lot, it's like a truck stop, I suppose. And it was closing. I don't know what time of night it was. It must have been early hours of the morning, because most of these things stay open quite late. There was only 2 cars in the parking lot, and like a lunatic, I was hammering on the door, asking for help. I still hadn't really calmed down. I was running on adrenaline. And again, they would have had every right to just call the cops, thinking I am an escaped maniac, but instead they let me in. They calmed me down, the diner owner and the woman who was working there with him, and they calmed me down. They wrapped me in a blanket. They asked me what had happened. They thought that I'd been in an accident or something like that. Somehow I had scratches on me. They weren't from the bear. And yeah, I basically told them I'm a British man heading west, don't you know? Just got a bit turned around here in one of your fancy Dakotas. And yeah, they took mercy on me. They allowed me to stay the night in the diner. They left, they locked up, and the owner said, the washroom's through there, do what you need to do. If you want anything to eat or drink, feel free to grab it. Just leave a note to say what you've got. If I'm not the guy who opened, I think, no, he said he wasn't opening up in the morning, but he was going to let the person who was going to open up know that I was there. And yeah, so they allowed me to stay in their property, their commercial property, not knowing who the hell I was, other than the fact I was a British white guy with a fairly nice accent. And that was the greatest kindness, I think, unconditional kindness I think I've ever experienced. And has always led me to believe that, rather optimistically, that in America, there is an awful lot of goodwill that exists, especially in provincial areas, and we don't get to see it so much these days. I'm sure it is still there, and the problem is, I know that if I'd been a black guy hammering on that door, if I'd been a Latino, If I had been anything other than white, I'm sure these two, because I stayed in touch with them for quite a long time after that, would have been fine either way. But there were plenty of circumstances where I was picked up, where if I'd been anything other than white and British and male, I would have had difficulties. And if I'd been a woman, I wouldn't have never dared do what I did, because it would have been far too dangerous. It's far too predatory. So I appreciate that there are conditions to how good I had it. But yeah, I think it's something to take some solace in. If you're an American, those people are out there. I know things seem very dark ages right now, but those people do exist. You've just got to hope they support you when you need it the most. So there are two of my hitchhiking across America stories. I used to love hitchhiking when I was younger, but I was also a very desperate and depressed young man, so that was why I did it. So yeah, there you go. There's two of my stories. I have many, many more. No one asked about that, but I got carried away. So let's answer some questions before I get to my game. Oh wow, okay, there's been a few. Link says, bet it was nice to come back to the jump-in sign-ups for Monster Kingdoms. Absolutely. I mean, we're over 400 now. The game was supposed to launch on BackerKit on Tuesday, and it was some kind of BackerKit issue. An error on their end has resulted in it being launched tomorrow. But the great news is that the number of pre-sign-ups has shot up over 400. So if you haven't signed up to Monster Kingdoms yet on BackerKit to be notified when that campaign goes live, the link is in the video description below. I would really appreciate it. Hell, if we can get 500 before the campaign even starts, that is fantastic. My pleasure, Corbin. You enjoyed the Primal revision manuscript. I think I'll soon have to talk about some of those revisions in a video. Joshua says, got the notification you were going live right after I walked out my own door for a walk. Good. Yes, I do have sexual magnetism in the USA. That's some other stories of my hitchhiking past that won't be shared on YouTube. Benjamin Lesser says, it's because for some reason we find the accent very disarming. I mean, all joking aside, that is true. If I had been in America and I had spoken with a less penetrable English accent, I think I would have had it more difficult. It's the fact that I am from the county of Wiltshire. There is a fairly, what I would consider, neutral accent in this part of the country. Obviously, I think it's neutral, it's my accent. But it is broadly understandable. Bragonic says, how strong would a ghoul side by Kane be? Well, if they've only just been ghouled, they'd be the same power as any other ghoul. Obviously, the vitae in their system would be potent, but there's nothing in the rules to suggest that that ghoul would be any more powerful than another. Narratively speaking, I think they would be damn powerful. But I think also narratively, I think if Kane tried to ghoul someone, the blood would almost explode out of their body immediately. Yes, it is kind of weird even for Christian Americans, Joshua. Easy Bob says, what's up, have fun gaming, I will too. Nice story of your travels. I like how you talk, just like Americans. I will. Yummy Christian literature. Yeah, I didn't eat a bite of it, unfortunately. Awkward GM Corbin says, I like the Red Dwarf joke of the Seventh-day Adventist hoppists. They had a typo in their Bible that said the greatest of these is hop, so they hopped through service. Yeah, the ones I met didn't hop. I didn't eat the blue heart holding the Bible together, no. And I'm not giving anyone asylum in the UK right now, I'm afraid, Xander. You would need to go to my government for that, and right now, good luck with it. Luxtall says, I'm Polish, and from my experience, the most devoted Christians in my country are sadly the worst kind of people. Yeah, Polish Catholics and the Polish Orthodoxists that I've encountered tend to be fairly... what's the word? Ardent? Dueling banjos playing in the background. Yeah, it seems like everyone would have done the same thing as I would, running into the woods. I see I've attracted the usual bunch of strange people on this channel while all this was going on, so let's get rid of some of them. I did indeed choose the bear. I'm not crying about being white. Frankly, in that case, I was very grateful to be white. I think it worked out pretty well for me. All right, yes, okay. I am going to head on to my game. So, my last words of advice. Please pick up a copy of Monster Kingdoms. The crowdfunder will go live tomorrow, and if you want to get onto the higher tier of backer tiers available, you'll want to sign up early. To get notified early, do go over to the link below, click on it, put your email in, you'll get notified when the campaign goes live, and I do hope you sign up for the game. Because Monster Kingdom is a great deal of fun. Oh, and in fact, there's one last thing I wanted to draw your attention to. If anyone here isn't yet supporting my Patreon, I know some of you are. A lot of people have for a very long time now been saying, when are you running Vampire again? When are you going to be running Vampire the Masquerade again? Because it's been a few years now. I've been somewhat exhausted with Vampire. And I'm running Vampire again. In the next few months, I'll be starting up some new Chronicles of Vampire. So, if you are interested in playing Vampire the Masquerade with me, the gentleman gamer, Matthew Dawkins, a former developer of the game, go on over to my Patreon, which is also linked in the video description, and send me a message through there, or through MatthewDawkins.com, and we can talk about timings and things like that and availability. And if that is something that appeals to you, please go ahead and do it. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Bye-bye.